in the midst of a huge transformation where our peers, communities, and workplaces are all really melding into one. Welcome to Reimagining Company Culture. My name is Christina Giordano, and I'm the Partnerships and Community Manager here at AllVoices, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome our next guest onto the show, Lucia Guillory. She is the VP People and Places leader at Virta Health. Lucia, thank you for being here. If you want to share a little bit about yourself, including your pronouns, and when you were younger, do you remember how you answered the question, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Sure. So I'm Lucia. I lead this really cross-functional team that includes HR and recruiting and places and IT at Virta Health. And my pronouns are she, her. And okay, so your question is, what did I want to be when I grew up?
Yeah.
Interestingly, I wanted to be a psychiatrist. So
Okay.
yeah, like my whole life, I've had this feeling of being on the outside of things or this kind of otherness. And so one of the ways that I wanted to address that, even as a young kid, was like, oh, I'll learn everything about social situations and like how to make friends. And I'll read all of these books and that's going to make me popular. And so I became really interested in psychology and psychiatry, and read lots of books about that as a little kid and even into college. And it was after doing an internship in a psych ward that I realized I actually don't want to be a psychiatrist, but I do want to listen to people's problems and help them, but in a work context. And that's when I kind of made the pivot to organizational behavior.
That's interesting because now you're working on this cross-functional team. You fast forward to right now at Virta Health. It's people and places. I'm sure people are coming to you all the time, hoping that you'll listen to them as well. How do you think your personal journey has really led you up until this point to Virta Health specifically?
Well, I would say there's definitely a connection there. One part of my life that I didn't mention when talking about the psychiatry piece is that I have a very long and vast family history of diabetes. So my father is an over 20-year diabetic who also suffered a massive stroke when I was in graduate school and is paralyzed. So, you know, the impact of diabetes on me personally has been pretty great. Most of his siblings also have diabetes, and my mom is a pre-diabetic. So diabetes has been a big part of my life for a long time. And the idea of being able to help people reverse their diabetes, one, it was a shocker for me when I learned about the company, but two, since being a part of it is just so empowering and exciting for me. And it fits in with the interest I had in psychiatry, in that what I wanted to do with going into psychiatry was like help people with the issues that they faced and see them cured, see the issue resolved. And what I didn't like about it was that my experience of it was that it was a field that was very focused on medications that helped you through a rough patch, but did not lead to a resolution of the issue that you faced. You know, my sense is that cognitive behavioral therapy, those types of things can help you solve the problem. But a lot of the work I was doing as a psychiatry intern was just, let's give you a drug that'll help you feel better in the short term, and then you'll be back here in XYZ period of time when you go off your meds or what have you. And so that piece, which helped me switch from psychiatry to a focus on psychology more broadly and organizational behavior, is also part of what I love about Virta, where we are focused on giving people the tools that they need to reverse their own diabetes and come off their meds, as opposed to being dependent upon these drugs to live their daily lives.
Mm-hmm. Well, number one, thank you for sharing your experience and your family's experience as well to the mission of the company. I'm sure a lot of folks are interested in working at Virta and being part of the team because of their kind of lived or learned experience as well. And I want to ask, in terms of just like the team that you work with and cross-functionally as well, do you think that there are any kind of touch points throughout the employee experience that are really crucial to cultivating, you know, that retention, checking in on folks, and making sure that they're part of, you know, the mission of doing the company as well?
For sure. I would say the start of your experience is extremely impactful. There's no way to understate the importance of those very initial touch points, your first day, your onboarding experience. And so right now, since we're scaling really rapidly, that's an area of deep focus for us because there are so many different teams that influence onboarding, right? So there's like IT getting you your technology, there's HR understanding, what's happened with your background check and the benefits that you need and all of this. There's recruiting that has the pre-existing relationship with you and so should help move you into this phase of now you're an employee. So it's understanding each piece and all the parties and putting it together while also thinking through the experience of those who are delivering this onboarding, but also those who are actually having the onboarding and what it's like for them. And so I would say that start is very much a focus for us. But the other thing I would note is that the devil is very much in the details in the people space, even more now, I would say, than before, because I feel like since we have kind of expanded our view of the world and there's more of a fluidity between work and life, people are more experience oriented in their thinking about what they want to get from work. And anything can affect the experience. Like you mispronounce someone's name, you send something out and there's a detail that's wrong that can lead someone to feel like you don't care about them or you didn't take the time to get it right. So I would say the start and just details in general. I've become a very detail-oriented person from working in the space and working so cross-functionally with the way that I've designed my team.
Yeah, I like the holistic perspective for kind of the onboarding experience when someone joins, because you do have new folks who are joining, but you also have different team members like managers and folks who are kind of either leading onboarding or creating those meaningful connections. So making sure that everybody feels supported and on the same page is really important as well. And in terms of details, I read kind of around the articles and other podcasts as well that you're really into like a data-driven approach. And I saw in February 2021, seems like forever ago, but I saw that Virta was making really an evidence-based approach on employees' benefits. And one of the stats was around a quarter of the team are parents. I'm sure that number has grown since then as well. How do you offer individualized support for parents with newborns to teenagers?
Yeah, so it's true. I am a data geek. It's something that has stayed with me over the years and I'm really passionate about. So I think that initial understanding and belief, like, oh, if I read enough about this and know enough about this, I can have this happen in the world. When thinking about parents in particular, there are a host of things that we do. We think about the life cycle of being a parent. And I'm lucky in that I'm now actually part of that life cycle. I just had a son about 15 months ago, but we start even before you have become, with child or adopted, thinking through benefits that we can provide to help you in your efforts in the fertility space. So that was one of our focuses, is thinking through, what are the benefits that we can add to help with fertility, stipends in that space, and then thinking through, okay, now you have this baby or this child that you've adopted or what have you in your life. What can we do to support? So in terms of early baby experiences, we have Clio, which people have really enjoyed, along with other resources that are focused on that period of time where their baby is young and you're trying to learn as a parent how to do things. And then when you think about further life as a parent, we have a number of ERGs that are oriented around kind of peer support, where parents can talk about issues that they're facing in their parenting journey with one another and kind of help each other through it. So we're thinking about these different types of offerings at different times. We also, through our benefits, are focused on generosity and support. So for instance, we give 16 weeks when a new person is brought into your life, and everything is paid, and it's paid directly by Virta so that you don't have to go through all of these steps of filing this and filing that. We really want it to be an easy and seamless experience for you and for you to be able to focus on your family.
Yeah, I think those resources are really critical, and family planning as well before you adopt a child or before you have a child as well is really important too, to set yourself up for, okay, my workplace is supporting me in my life outside of work as well. And also I think your manager, your teammates also play into that in terms of group dynamics. And we know that even within the best company culture where everything is thriving, there are some power dynamics. If there are hierarchy between, a senior manager to a manager to someone who just joined 3 weeks ago, how have you seen kind of power dynamics impact the workplace, and how do we really effectively mitigate that?
I would say power dynamics, they affect all relationships. So they definitely affect work relationships as well and can be challenging. For me, like in the way that I approach org design, I'm very systems oriented. So I want to ensure that the systems that we build counteract and mitigate the negative effects of power imbalances, I would say, when you think about equity, for instance, out in the world, or if you're thinking about like a manager-employee relationship. So systems like ensuring that whatever happens in performance management involves a detailed calibration where people have to put forth real business relevant rationales for their performance perspectives, ensuring that the relationship between compensation and performance is a really close one. There's an easy connection between those two things so that we're not in a situation where some sort of power or relationship phenomena is leading some people to get paid more and other people to get paid less. My approach is very much about understanding these systems and really evaluating them with an eye towards whether everyone has the same opportunities in them, and trying to eliminate bias and imbalances in power.
Yeah, I think that definitely makes sense in terms of opportunities, creating resources, guidelines, and common language and frameworks as well, to really set people up for success, meeting the team where they are. One of the kind of hardest things that a new person, or even anyone, no matter where they are on their kind of employee journey at a company, is either giving or receiving constructive feedback. I was reading an article around, a nice company culture, and nice doesn't mean you always say positive things. You really want to have that intention of being helpful. What is your advice for kind of giving and receiving feedback that is really intended to help that individual?
Well, for me, my thought is when it comes to receiving feedback, you have to really receive it. Feedback is a gift. It's a thing that can make you better that someone is giving you for free. So, my approach is always, I want to hear what you're saying to me. I want to internalize it. And I want to think through what I can do given that information, and to communicate that I appreciate it, because it's difficult to give feedback. It's not an easy thing to tell someone about a thing that they could be doing better. And so my approach is always to come to it with the perspective of appreciation for that. And then on the other side, when I'm giving feedback, something similar is true. I want to give feedback in the way that you would need to for it to be received as a gift, right? Thinking through what can help this person, what does this person need from me in this communication so that they can be fully present. And that could be finding the right time and place to give the feedback. That could be ensuring that you make the feedback concrete by giving examples of instances where the thing that you're describing is happening. But I would definitely say thinking through how to deliver is a really important part of giving feedback that I reflect on a lot and continue to learn from. Sometimes I give feedback and it turns out swimmingly. Sometimes it doesn't. And I like to reflect upon, what could I have changed about the way that I delivered this that would have led to the person being more responsive to what I was sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that goes back to your earlier point as well, in terms of the devil's in the details and being really specific around what you mean by your feedback, whether that's providing, concrete examples, and really an ongoing conversation with the individual to talk about how they would like to receive that feedback, whether it's in the moment separately or, on a certain cadence as well. I have questions around, so not necessarily at Virta, so this could be, something that you're seeing in the news or just with companies in general, but are there any common mistakes you've seen, especially over the past 2 years that companies or leaders are making in their people strategy?
Okay. Well, I would say like three things. I can think of three things that come to mind. I think, the first I would say is turning your back on what's going on in the world, right? There's a sense among some organizations that there are things that they shouldn't comment on, they shouldn't be involved in, they shouldn't be a part of, that are happening in the world, that are social phenomena that are driving the way that people see and experience the world. And I think that that's a mistake for companies to make, in that employees are people who are in the world experiencing these things that are happening, and companies need to address them and need to address them head on and have a perspective that's aligned with their culture. So I think it's a big mistake to kind of turn your back on those things and either come out saying you're not going to address them, which I have seen some companies do, or just to fail to say anything. I think both of those things is a mistake. I also think that believing money solves everything is a mistake as well, in that, you can pay someone 2x, 3x, 4x, but if you have a poor culture, if you don't treat them like a human being, if you don't provide them an opportunity to progress, it's not going to work. And so I would say ensuring that you have all of those systems in place and giving those systems nourishment and time and space to develop is important, and in many cases more important than whatever the final comp line is. And then the third one, which I'm sure lots of people talk about, is just allowing brilliant jerks to ruin your culture or take over your org. I think every org has one person or a few people who are just highly skilled at what they do. They are brilliant, they are effective, but they have not honed this other element of themselves, and they produce challenges to the culture. And I think that, orgs fail when they turn a blind eye to that and don't take action.
Absolutely. I like your second point in terms of, I liked all of your points, but I think that stood out to me of money doesn't solve everything. It's not
It doesn't.
a solution. Yeah, there's a ton of research around just what keeps employees at companies, and when you feel connected to the work, to your team, when you feel supported. Of course, the baseline of compensating everybody fairly is important, but that's very much table stakes.
Mhm.
And I think that's important to remember. I guess on the flip side, is there a must-have that you think people leaders really need to incorporate in their strategy to be successful in the future, whether they are specifically on the people team or they are people managers?
Yeah. I mean, to this must have and the money thing, I would say empathy, right? So people work for people. They don't work for machines that create widgets. They work for other people. They work with other people. That's what motivates them to do what they're doing and to keep doing it every day. If someone's motivation is only money, there's always some other place that will give them more money that they can find if they're motivated. So, I think people leaders need to be deeply empathetic. They need to understand what the humans who work within an organization need and want and value. And that's the currency of this field. I think we've had the rise of many different parts of the people space. Like I'd see there's like a rise of benefits right now, and there has been a rise of analytics. But I think that a certain degree of understanding and empathy is critical, regardless of what the hot thing in the people space is right now. You have to have that.
Yeah, you have to have that human-centric approach and think about the systems on a whole, like you were talking about as well. The way to do that is through empathy, it's through kind of leading with that vulnerability too, and listening to your people as well. I know I asked a lot of specific questions around your personal career path to Virta and just the strategies you're thinking about at the organization and in the people space at large, but is there something that's taking up brain space that I haven't asked you about, like a next problem or a situation you're trying to solve?
Well, I would say kind of what I referenced earlier about just the immense surface area of the people space as we've defined it here at Virta is something that keeps me up at night. I want to know everything that happens to the teammate. I want to know every step from like, okay, they open their computer and then they see this message and it means this to them, so trying to be able to visualize and deeply understand all of those steps and how to improve them is on my mind because I'm responsible for all of the parts of the experience. There are really an infinite number of things that could go wrong, or it could go right. So, I mean, I spend a lot of time right now thinking through the key elements of the employee experience and all of the things that happen in it. And, there's kind of the start with onboarding. Then there's the feedback conversations you have with your manager. There's developing relationships with your teammates. There's something that can be done at each of those parts. And it's just getting ahead of the planning on that, understanding where the pain points are going to arise on your team as you scale. The other thing that's making this top of mind for me is that we are growing really, really rapidly as a company right now. And when that happens, systems break down and they need to be streamlined. And it's kind of a continual process, which is taxing for the company because it's like all these things are changing all the time. And it's upsetting to me, I think, is the way that teammates feel. So thinking about that surface area, managing the change that's happening, those are the things that are keeping me up right now.
Is there anything that would make your life easier when you are thinking about all of these pieces? Also, just thinking about it from the perspective of someone who isn't on your team and sees you doing all of these things. This could be anything.
I mean, yeah, if there was some kind of magic wand that would help everyone understand what we were doing and why. So some kind of like alignment and communication superpower.
Yeah.
Like if I could have that, that would be amazing. If I could just like look at someone and they knew exactly like what was changing, why it was changing, why it couldn't be done XYZ way. If I could download all that information and like have it communicated seamlessly, that would be the save for me and for my teams right now.
That definitely makes sense, especially as you scale and add more folks to the mix too, in terms of communicating. And I feel like a lot of people would also want the magic wand as well. We've talked about kind of the importance of empathy and really thinking about the details and the systems that you're creating, how you're supporting working parents and just family planning in your team in general, the employee experience. Is there anything that I didn't ask that you want to share with the folks who are listening, or maybe 1 to 2 key takeaways that you hope they bring with them after listening to our conversation today?
Yeah, I would say you don't have to be anyone special to lead. And this is a thing that I think a lot about for myself, but also for others, in that I hope that from experiencing me through this podcast or web conversation, what have you, that you can tell that I'm just a regular person. I'm just doing the best that I can. And I feel like too often, particularly folks who are underrepresented and have been marginalized, don't feel like they are worthy of leading, or they feel like they need additional credentials, additional experience to be in a leadership position. I want it to be clear that a regular person whose life is a mess, I would say. I've got like a 15-month-old who was just before I got on this call crawling all over me. Regular people can lead and they can lead at scale. And all you have to do is really do it, like make it happen. But it's there for you, and you most definitely can take that step. And then on experience, I would say experience does matter. I talked to tons of candidates who are unclear on whether they should apply because they don't have the experience in a description. I would say experience does matter, but experiences differ. Like I would say 6 months in a really high growth startup is like 6 years some places, in terms of like the volume of change and the amount of work, the intensity that you experience in that short time. And so there, I would say, don't shortchange yourself. Go to places where you're going to be stretched and where you're going to grow, and then take stock of the experience you have and your ability to do your next thing, the next thing that you're seeking. Have confidence in your ability to deliver and to make it at that next level.
I love that. Real people, regular people can be leaders, and they are great leaders. I think sometimes we definitely forget that because we see, Lucia on this podcast, or just like all of these CEOs and just like these chief people officers just being these super humans. And you're doing a lot of work, but also it's just, if you are interested in doing this work and you can see yourself doing it, you should also just have confidence in yourself. So I love that message. Lucia, thank you so much for being on Reimagining Company Culture. I enjoyed our discussion this afternoon.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Of course. And as a reminder for folks who are listening, at AllVoices, we believe in the empowerment of everyone to speak up and believe that employee feedback management is necessary for the company to succeed. And have a good rest of your day, everyone.